Welcome into the first edition of the Lockdown Podcast. I'm Jorge Sedano. Coming up in a little bit, we will preview Heat and Lakers, which will be on ESPN television with Mike Breen, Jeff Van Gundy, Mark Jackson, and yours truly on the call. That will be the late game on our Wednesday doubleheader. And Ethan Skolnick of 5 Reasons Sports, who's been around forever in South Florida, has covered the Heat and their multiple championships, including LeBron while he was there, D. Wade, that group, Chris Bosh, Pat Riley, obviously, and Eric Spoelstra. And then also worked at Bleacher Report, where he covered LeBron for a year in Cleveland in his return there. So a lot of experience in dealing with LeBron. So we'll preview that game with him. But right now, I got my brother from another mother, Marc Spears of Anscape, is joining us here, senior writer, ESPN, NBA as well. So, Mark,
all right, am I the first guest?
You are guest number one, my brother. Come on now. And you're wearing your San Jose State football hoodie. So there you go.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I love it. So those who are watching on YouTube can see that. But you can always subscribe to this podcast if you don't know where the hell to find it on the Sedano and Cap ESPN Los Angeles radio show feed. It will be a separate line in that radio show feed. So very easy to find. We're going to be doing these lockdown podcasts a couple times a week, and it'll give you a little one-on-one time with me and my friends, basically. So we start off with friend numero uno, Marc Spears, as I mentioned. So let's start with the Western Conference, because the universe in the NBA for the better part of the last 20 years has revolved around the Western Conference.
Yeah.
And particularly the universe in the NBA has also revolved around either LeBron James or the Lakers, if not both. Yeah. So we have a situation where LeBron James, most recently in this trip to Miami during this road trip, was very vocal when asked by our own Dave McMiniman about a question about longevity, started talking about it's not in his DNA to play basketball just to play basketball. And that he believes he can still be part of a championship caliber team and be a big resource or a reason as to why that team is a championship team. He's balling out recently, 2 40-point games, the oldest player to do that, not just once, but now twice. The only other player on that list is Michael Jordan. And I'm of the opinion, Mark, that if you're the LeBron James business, you have to push your chips to the center of the table all the time. That is the expectation. And his recent play is only, I think, fortifying that particular position by me. What do you think about what's transpiring with the Lakers and LeBron and what they should do?
Well, Cleveland needs a small forward, right?
Uh-oh. He can't be traded. For those that want to ask, LeBron cannot be traded this year. He can't be traded until the offseason.
No, I'm just messing, man. I just want to keep LA on its toes. There's somebody in the Bay. His play has been magnificent. I could give a bunch of other words, but basically they'll be on a magnificent level. I mean, to be mentioned in the same air as Jordan is speaks for itself. To be dang near 40 years old doing what he's doing is special, and also to be doing it without Anthony Davis. Like, I'm sure Lakers fans are paying attention to this. I don't know about NBA fans throughout, but you can't rule teams out in October and November and December, man. There's a lot of basketball to be played. And this Lakers team, after this really impressive road trip, is slowly creeping up that ladder. Slowly, I'm not talking about like leading the conference, but they're slowly getting into at least the play-in conversation again. And then if AD comes back, which he may be coming back relatively soon, then, hey, maybe you move up some more. But the way LeBron has been playing, I call him like LeBron and the Miracles right now. It's been nothing short of spectacular. And I'm curious to see where this team is at the All-Star break.
I mean, he's 38 years old and he's carrying them at this stage. There's no way that's what he envisioned when he came to Los Angeles, but it's out of necessity. And to your point, they are within striking distance of the play-in area. As of right now, the taping of this podcast on Tuesday, January 3rd, the Lakers are 16-21, and they are 2 games out of the 10 spot where Utah sits at the moment. I think they need to make a move. And to me, the obvious move is, they need someone that can shoot the ball. Because, remember game 1, he talked about, we don't have any lasers on this team when it came to shooters. The guy who's out there, because Miles Turner's not available anymore, it looks like, right? It looks like he's going to get extended in Indiana. The Nets
did
are.
that. Wait, I'm gonna stop you right there. They should have did that trade, man.
I agree. I agree. They
And
should have
you know, I have been barking that trade since for a while.
for him and Buddy Hield. You're saying?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, yes, there'll be picks involved, but to me, when you're talking about the Lakers, they're kind of like Dodgers, Yankees, like picks. Well, you're trying to win now, and your window with LeBron James is only so long. You figure out the rest later. Free agents will always come to Los Angeles. They'll always want to put that purple and gold on, right? So I think if they would have made that trade, they have their shooter, and then you have your big that's not only a really good big, but if Anthony Davis just coincidentally gets hurt and misses an extended period of time, he could fill the void, or they could play together when he's healthy.
And
Like
by
to
the way,
me,
that guy can also shoot. So to your point,
yeah,
it's a good pairing with him and Anthony.
yeah, and yeah. So, but like you said, that bus is probably passed. I think they should have did it. I mean, with all due respect to Russ, and he's rejuvenated his career, they should have did that trade. I think so. But in order to get some shooting, this might sound odd, but a team looking for some shooting right now, I mean, that has shooting to give away, is Brooklyn, right? You have Patty Mills, you have Joe Harris, you have Seth Curry. Like Patty Mills is not playing, right? Uh, um, Cam Thomas is on the roster. Like there's some expendable players on that roster. The problem is the Nets need some size. So I don't know what the Lakers have
Right.
to potentially give them back.
Yeah.
But I would keep an eye on the Nets potentially like trying to add some size to their team by trading some of their shooting because they just have a surplus of guards who can shoot the ball, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of them gets moved.
What do you think of Bogdanovich? Because to me, he's the guy that's most obvious to potentially move here at the trade deadline.
Which one?
Bojan, pardon me, in Detroit. He can shoot the ball. We know that.
Yeah.
He can get to the free throw line. He's excellent at doing that. And he's an above average defender that I think most people don't realize. But if you watched him play in Utah back in those days, you know that that's the case. And he's only got 2 more years left on his deal with a declining contract. The contract is not escalating, it's de-escalating.
I guess the question is, okay, what are the Lakers giving away?
You're definitely gonna have to give up a pick, that's for sure. At the very,
I mean, it's a pick. But there's nothing like what's attractive on the roster. I guess what is attractive on the roster could be Russ's contract for a team that wants to clear salary. That's what $40 million right there. So, and at that point, they might just say, "Hey, man, good seeing you. Nice meeting you. You don't have to come though," and let him go. So, I mean, to me, that is now. I think teams are starting to realize, and certainly, by February, if you're a real playoff team, or it's time to start talking about Victor, right? Wembanyama draft, and so I wonder if when you just have Russ's contract for a half a season, if that becomes more valuable to a potential team that is trying to add some picks and also trying to clear salary. But obviously the most coveted Laker pick there could be is going to the Pelicans.
Correct. You can't even get in the Victor sweepstakes.
So that's I think the problem that the Lakers run into is like, what assets do you have to give?
Well, those assets are the 27 and 29 pick. That's what they've got. And, you can match contracts with maybe like Pat Bev and Kendrick Nunn, right? Like you've got those contracts that you can use to match up. But really the asset is the picks.
But also, like, if I'm the Lakers too, like if you're trying to win, right? You're trying to get the best out of the last days of LeBron. Do you think Lakers fans would, for the most part, be upset if you move those picks to help LeBron?
I don't know. I think that before this last road trip, maybe they would be more willing to hold on to them and let this thing play out and just have cap space for this upcoming season. But I think with his most recent play, there's been some people that have been swayed, in my estimation.
Yeah.
Look, I've been on that bandwagon the whole time. You don't get in the LeBron James business to not
To be,
push all in. And by the way,
yeah.
you made a great point. People are always going to want to play in LA. Now, they may not be the caliber of LeBron James,
Yeah.
but there's always going to be someone, if you play this right, that will want to
But
play.
you're gonna get to fill out your roster with people that would be interested in coming.
For sure. Now,
more so than, I don't care what Utah's record is, what Cleveland's record is, what Milwaukee's record is. You get a call from LA, unless that call from Milwaukee's coming from Giannis, like, you're gonna be like, yeah, Lakers. Yeah, I mean, you're always gonna pick up that call. So there'll always be, whether it's with cap space or minimum contracts, they're always going to be in the mix for whoever the top available at each slot are. So that's why I thought trading the picks, you know, get LeBron who he needs to win. You roll the dice, like, because once he walks out the door, it's going to be tough, man. So you got to make the best of his time.
I agree wholeheartedly. So, Mark, you mentioned that the Lakers owe that potential pick swap to the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, let's talk about the rest of the Western Conference. To me, the reason the Lakers should make a move is because the West is so wide open. I look at it this way, and you tell me how you feel about all of this. I know you've been around a lot of these teams, including New Orleans recently. Okay. I look at the Golden State Warriors. I don't know Steph's situation. They're hopeful he's going to come back. We don't know what that's going to look like. If he does come back, can he get re-injured, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
They've been great at home, terrible on the road. We know that.
Yeah.
New Orleans is young. They don't have the playoff experience, right?
Yeah.
Memphis has more playoff experience, but still young and not a ton of playoff experience. Denver, we know that they got the MVP, and I feel like Jamal Murray is fine, is more than fine. He's certainly a good go-to guy at the end, but can you trust Michael Porter Jr.? Can you trust the Clippers to be healthy? I don't know if I can trust them to be healthy.
Yeah.
The
Or
Dallas
Denver.
situation, what's that going to look like?
Yeah.
There's a lot of teams. I can go down a laundry list here of teams in the Western Conference, but
They
I don't
have a shot.
how good they're going to be. The Sacramento Kings are a nice story, but are they going to be actually a team that can do anything in the West? So as you see the West and the way it's materializing, who stands out to you, and who do you feel confident in moving forward, and who do you feel needs to make a move for sure?
Who do I feel confident in? I don't know that I feel confident in anybody.
There you go.
And that's not ducking your answer. Just,
no, but that's the same way I feel.
And we're talking about the Western Conference. I might feel strong about teams in the East and in the West. But if you look at the West as of, was this Tuesday, the 3rd, there's 4.5 games between first and 9th place.
Yeah.
4.5 games. Like, so are you going to tell me right now the Warriors in 9th place, once they get Steph and Wiggins back, they have no shot of being on top of this conference? It's too early. It's about as wide open as I've ever known it to be. Like, I've never, like, there's probably literally, like, I mean, Denver, Memphis, New Orleans, I'm not putting Dallas or Sac, Clippers, Phoenix, and Golden State, 6 teams all, I think, got a shot. They're winning the conference. I've never felt like that before. Dallas, yes, they have a really good record right now, but I think they'll need help to really be in that conversation.
Yeah.
They didn't replace Brunson. I think Nico Harrison's going to find Luka that help. And so I think the roster that you see Dallas have now could be different after the trade deadline. Christian Wood has been amazing, but they need some backcourt help. But now, so I'm curious to see what they do. Denver is just like, I'm trying to think of who Denver is. Like, Denver's always, ever since Melo was there, they've always pretty much made the playoffs. But once they get there, they don't do anything. And I mean, I kind of feel for Nuggets fans because they're just always that, 2nd place, 3rd place, honorable mention. They always get an award of some sort, but not the prize, man. They've never had a championship. And do you feel confident that they are the team this time around? I don't.
I don't, mostly because I don't know if I can trust Michael Porter Jr.'s health. And Jamal Murray, I think he's a good closer for them.
Yeah.
Along with Joker, is also coming off an injury, right?
Yeah.
Like, I like the pieces around them.
Aaron Gordon's playing great.
Yeah. KCP is playing really well as a role player for them. Aaron Gordon is
I
playing.
think it's like they're that team. You got to see them get over the hump to believe.
Right. And by the way, Bones Highland is a good player, but he's very hit or miss on certain nights. If his shot's not falling, that's a problem off the bench. So to your point, I think there's a lot of questions in the West. Let's talk about New Orleans, though. Let's talk about New Orleans and Memphis here real quick. How real is New Orleans in your estimation? Now, granted, Zion also tweaked a hammy on Monday night, so I don't know what his status is, but my guess is it's not serious. Hopefully it's not. But how serious of a threat are they?
If New Orleans is healthy, with an emphasis on healthy, they're capable of beating anybody. Like, for them to have the record that they have right now, you know, and entering Tuesday, they were third best record in the West, 23-14. It's stunning. I see why Willie Green got the coach of the December. He misses Zion for a lot of games. Brandon Ingram's been out for a long time. Like most teams in this league that have had some major injuries have pretty much collapsed, taken a step backward. Not the Pelicans. They've been scratching wins. And, you know, CJ McCollum deserves a lot of credit for that. He's had a couple 40 pieces. He's had like 6 games in the last month over 25. So he's showing you that he could still, you know, I might be in my 30s. I might be a number 3 guy on most nights, but he could star when he needs to. And so between the coach and the Willie Green and between CJ McCollum's play, and then everybody there just knows their roles, man. Plays their roles to the best of their ability, which is you know, a reason why they are there. But if they are healthy, Zion's a matchup nightmare. If you remember, Brandon Ingram was outstanding in his short playoff stint. I gave you a view of what he can be, but he has that, like, might be like a turf toe injury that's pretty scary.
Yeah, he's got a toe situation. Yeah. And by the way, here's the other thing, Mark. They're not scared. We saw that in that Phoenix series last year.
We ain't scared of nobody. If you remember that Zion 360 at the end of that Suns game, they're angry. The crowd is thirsty. The city is thirsty. The Saints ain't doing nothing. Like, they're all in on Pelicans basketball. And if you haven't been to a game there, go. It's electric and it's fun. But as I said, if they're healthy.
Right.
The big question with them, they're really capable of beating anyone.
And Memphis, to me, I love their swag. They remind me of a college team in a lot of ways. I did a game with them in Phoenix the other day where I'm interviewing Jaren Jackson Jr. in the walk-off, and Ja and Dylan Brooks are right there, like, kind of standing there as I'm asking questions and, like, you know, tapping him on the shoulder, like, yeah, like backing him up. It's wild to see when you watch them. I still feel
you know what I love? I will say this too. I love their camaraderie, man.
Yeah.
Like when you see them walk out and they're dancing and stuff together, not individually, together, walking into the court. Somebody plays well, to your point, George, they're celebrating next to them. They celebrate their teammate, and it's a team thing all the time. And Ja Morant deserves a lot of credit for that, for making it about the team, even though we know the spotlight is on him and it's the spectacular that he is. They have depth. They played some big playoff games. They're another team that has to get over the hump. Jaren is all-star talented. He has to get his foul trouble situation together.
And healthy.
But they're another team, man. Like, you do not want to play them, man.
Yeah.
Like being in some bar fight. That's what playing them is like.
Yeah. With Phoenix, obviously with Book being out for an extended period of time, that changes the equation. Obviously, Cam Johnson is out. Cam Payne has just come back. What are they missing? Like Jay Crowder's not available. Do you know anything about the Jay Crowder situation?
So like just trying to wait for the best deal.
Yeah.
They miss him and he misses them probably. I wish he would have just still continued to play. For him to sit at home, I don't think it does either one of them any good. Not that he doesn't have value. He's proven what he is, but certainly both sides could use each other. I'm curious to see what they get. I'm curious to see what they want. But I mean, Book, certainly has him rolling, and you need to see more from Ayton. Ayton's had his injury problems too. Chris is trying his best, but that team now really lives and dies with Devin Booker.
Yeah.
And when he's there, like I said, there's 6 teams, man. It's like the NBA, this has been a fun season so far. Despite the drama that it opened with ever since they got past that, it's been a really, really fun season with some great moments already. Like career-defining moments, whether it's Luka or whether, it's Spider or Clay. Like there's been some Embiid, Joker, incredible moments this season. And it's really anyone's guess on both conferences who's gonna. I don't know. I don't think there's a clear-cut favorite in either side.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And speaking of which, before I let you go, I want to have a quick conversation about the East. Milwaukee, I already mentioned I'm doing the Lakers Heat game tomorrow on ESPN. The game before us on ESPN is Milwaukee and Toronto. Toronto has been a bit of a mess in a lot of ways for a lot of reasons we don't have to get into right here. We could do it some other time. But my question to you on the East very quickly is, to me, it feels like Milwaukee and Boston and then everyone else, although Brooklyn is trying to make a push here. I just don't know how much I buy into them in the playoffs against those two teams. Maybe I'm wrong. How do you view the East?
I'm a huge Kevin Durant fan, man.
Okay. Well, as everyone is, I get that. You think they can win the East, Brooklyn?
Yes, I do. I definitely do. I mean, they won 12 in a row. When Kyrie's just playing basketball and there's no other distraction, they're a mess to deal with. They're also probably the lightest team in the NBA. I think they need some size, and that's why I think one of their shooters are valuable. And I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe move somebody to get some more size, or after the trade deadline and somebody gets cut, if there's somebody of interest to them to give them more size, maybe they pick them up that way or both.
Yeah.
But Brooklyn, man, like Jacques Vaughn is doing an amazing job. He just got Coach of the Month, give him credit. So right now in the East, Bucks are kind of, but obviously they have their injury issues. Philly ready,
Philly's got a whole load of problems that we can discuss some other time. I feel
Boston is confusing me right now. I don't know what's going on with them, their lack of consistency, but don't sleep on Brooklyn, man.
Okay. All right. We won't sleep on Brooklyn. Yeah. No sleep till Brooklyn either,
by the way. No sleep. Don't sleep on them.
Yeah. Marc Spears of Anscape, senior writer, ESPN as well, does a phenomenal job covering the NBA. My brother, thank you so much for being
first guest. Always can't change that.
Yes, sir.
It's always going to be on my resume.
All right. I appreciate you.
When you get your Emmy, man, make sure I get one.
Okay. I'll make sure to check you out.
All right, man. Love you, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Peace.
There he is. Marc Spears with us here. Ethan Skolnick with a Lakers Heat preview next. He covers the Heat for 5 Reasons Sports, been in Miami forever, covered LeBron both in Miami and Cleveland. We will chat with him next here on the Lockdown Podcast. Welcome back to the second half here of the Lockdown Podcast. We're now joined by Ethan Skolnick, a longtime friend of mine from 5 Reasons Sports. I'll let him tell you where you can find all his work on podcasts and YouTube and all that stuff. And I'm bringing Ethan on because I will be working a nationally televised game between the Heat and the Lakers with Mike Breen, Jeff Van Gundy, and Mark Jackson on Wednesday here in LA at Crypto.com Arena, as the two teams that played against each other in the 2020 finals will go at it. And obviously there's a lot of correlation between these two teams beyond that, particularly because of Pat Riley and LeBron. And there's a lot of history there, certainly. So, Ethan, first, thanks for hanging out here. But before I get into the Lakers aspect of this, let's tackle the Heat real quick first. And why the sluggish start, in your estimation, is, beyond Jimmy Butler being in and out. And I guess, what do you know about Jimmy Butler's status for this season?
Well, Jimmy's played, I think, 65% of the games. So that's not a huge surprise. I said before the year, I don't think he'll ever play 70 again. I don't think that's in the plans for the Heat for him to even play that much, because they got to get him to the finish line. We see with Jimmy that it's about the playoffs. I think he's a top 10 player in the postseason. He's proven that, with the exception of that one sweep by Milwaukee where he was outscored by Bryn Forbes. But we saw the more representative Jimmy Butler last postseason and the postseason prior to the failed one, which, as you mentioned, ended in the finals against the Lakers, where he pretty much went even with LeBron in a series. And if he had Dragic and Bam in that series, I wonder if they might have actually pulled that thing out. So I didn't expect Jimmy to play all the games this year, but I didn't expect him to play so few. They haven't been able to get really any kind of a rhythm with their top group. What's been a little bit strange about this season for them is that they were looking for breakthroughs from a couple of players in particular, and they've gotten those breakthroughs. But until recently, and I think we've seen a turn over the past 11 games, they're 8-3. Until recently, it hasn't translated to wins. They wanted Tyler Hero to become more of a well-rounded offensive player. He's had a terrific season. I mean, whatever Heat fans' complaints are about not going for Donovan Mitchell, which again is another conversation we can have, Tyler's numbers are great. I mean, his splits are 45, 40, 91. Okay. It's pretty damn good. His rebounding is best per minute of his career. His assists are best per minute of his career. And Bam Adebayo, everybody was just saying, okay, if he'll just be consistently aggressive. Well, he has been that. We saw what he did to the Clippers in this past game, and he is not hesitating now. He has actual go-to moves that he goes to. They're not in the post, but they're kind of in the mid-range. He knows how to get to his spots. He's taken over games now, even when Jimmy's played, which is something that he's not done in the past. So they've gotten the Hero and Bam breakouts. They've gotten a really good Jimmy when he's played, but the shooting has fallen off a cliff. That's the first thing. Duncan Robinson's not in the regular rotation anymore, and Max Strus has not shot the ball the way he did last season. They've had to count on guys playing sort of out of position in bigger roles, in part because they didn't really address one position in the offseason, which is they let PJ Tucker go. They re-signed Caleb Martin. It has proven to be the right decision in terms of the player that they kept and the player they gave up. But Caleb's not a 4. He's a really good wing. And he's perfect as your primary backup wing. But when you're starting him at the 4, you're starting every game at an undersized mismatch. And then here's the other thing, and this is kind of the elephant in the room here. Kyle Lowry's been okay at best. I would not go further than that with him. He's been inconsistent. We saw he didn't even close. He's not even closing games recently. They're closing with Oladipo. And the other factor, George, is until the past, week and a half, we didn't really know what we were going to see from Victor Oladipo. Well, now we're starting to see what Heat officials were telling me this offseason. Whenever I said, you're running it back, this is going to be stale, they said, no, you haven't seen what Depot looks like. It's like adding a whole new player. Well, then he had a training camp setback where he actually injured his other knee, had to work back from that. But his explosion, his burst over the past 2 games is better than I've seen it at any point in a Heat uniform or in a Rockets uniform. So if they can get this Oladipo with Bam, with Hero, with Butler playing consistently, and they make one trade, okay, they've got it. They're going to have to give up a pick. Okay, they're going to try to obviously unload Duncan Robinson's contract. I would not be stunned if they try to move Kyle Lowry. I don't think that's actually going to happen. They need to get a starting 4. If they get a starting 4, I feel like all the pieces fall into place. There are guys out there that they can look at. You move Caleb Martin to the bench. You have Strus as a shooter off the bench. You have Oladipo. You have Gabe Vincent coming back. Now you have a really nice 9-man rotation. They're missing one piece, and that one piece that they're missing has really hurt them this season.
Yeah, they needed a power forward in the worst way. And, obviously you see what a guy like Jeremy Grant has done for the Portland Trailblazers this year. I mean, he's been incredible for them.
Well, that's the guy, George. I mean, if they were, you look at the offseason, you take it back, that would have been the guy for sure.
Yeah. I mean, he's been great. I mean, he has literally been everything and more than what was advertised for the Portland Trailblazers this season. So I'm sure a number of teams who need fours have been kicking themselves in that regard, because if you remember, he didn't really go for a ton in retrospect. So I think that's one that a lot of teams will be kicking themselves over. Now, I get all that, and that's a great recap of where we are today with the Heat as they get ready to take on the Lakers on Wednesday. But I have one bone to pick. While Tyler Hero's numbers are insane and off the charts and continue to ascend offensively, you and I both know what this league has become, particularly in the playoffs. You are only as good as your weakest link, particularly on defense. And I think that is where I still wonder in a big way after watching and covering the Phillies series, where Doc Rivers, after the first two games, basically told us in these meetings, like, all right, we just can't let Hero get off the way he's getting off. And he wasn't great the rest of that series for the most part. He had some struggles in the series prior with Atlanta too, after they made some adjustments. And then obviously in the Boston series, he wasn't great. And then he was also hurt. So I do think that to me is the big question left with Tyler Hero is, what are they going to do with him in the postseason? And can he be a guy that can at least not be a net negative when he's out there defensively and not get hunted the way he had been previously?
Well, those are two different things. So let's start with the offense, because what you mentioned with Doc, I mean, Doc was very open about it during that series. They started throwing doubles at Tyler in a way that he hadn't seen before. Tyler wanted to see Milwaukee in the playoffs because of the way that Milwaukee plays. They play drop. Tyler loves that. Okay, he was taking
above the break threes. He can shoot.
That's him, and his 3-point efficiency is tremendous this season. His catch and shoot numbers are way up, but also he can shoot the three off the dribble. I think that the reason he's going to be better at the defense is another question. We're going to get to that in a second. Offensively, the reason that I think he'll be better is he spent his entire offseason, and you can see it. And if you follow, you mentioned where to find us, my podcast 5 on the Floor, which covers the Heat daily, and Brady Hawk, one of my co-hosts there, who's kind of a rising star in his own right. Brady has identified the way that Tyler has countered these coverages this year. And he identified it in the preseason. And some of the things that Tyler has started to do, whether it's to drop back a little bit or to try to step through or to get rid of the ball quickly, he is much, much, much improved in terms of countering that coverage. So I don't think that coverage is going to be a problem this year. I don't. I think Tyler, in a lot of cases, still needs a screen. Okay. He's not one just get you a bucket, isolation. It's just not ever going to be him to the extent that it is to bring him up again, Donovan Mitchell or somebody like that. But I do think in terms of the way that he's played those coverages, that's a big difference. The other thing I think that helps him tremendously is Bam's aggression, because Tyler and Bam have a natural connection. It's better than any other connection on the team. That is the duo that they're ultimately going to go forward with once Jimmy starts to age here. And that pick and roll cover, the way they attack that pick and roll coverage has come a long way. So I'm not worried about that. The defensive issue is another question, okay? They have to keep him from getting hunted. His off-the-ball defense has been better this year than it was. But the key to me to keeping him from getting hunted is the emergence of Victor Oladipo. Because you have the potential, because let's just be honest at this stage, Kyle Lowry's not a plus defender. Not on the ball. There's a reason that Caleb Martin, as a starting power forward, has been assigned to guard the point guard most of the time for the start of the game. And Kyle has been on these switches guarding bigs. He's better at guarding bigs at this stage than he is at guarding point guards. Okay, he uses his body. He's able to front them. He does a pretty good job competing there. But he's not a plus defender out on the perimeter anymore. Oladipo is. And he was from the minute he came back, even before he got totally healthy. If you're going to put out a lineup of Jimmy, Bam, Oladipo, and maybe Caleb Martin, okay, who has become a plus 3-point shooter. They may play Strus, okay, which gets one other kind of suspect defender on the floor. But if you put those guys out there with Hero, you can protect Hero. I feel like they're in better position to do that. And there is a reason, George, why they kept saying to me this offseason, Oladipo is a key for us. It's a huge key. But you and I both don't know, like, right, his body could break down at any time. So it sounds good the way it's looked the past week, but I don't know how it's going to look in February and March.
And look, Oladipo played great last night, I thought, against the Clippers, and they did kind of hide Tyler a little bit defensively. Now, granted, a regular season game, it's a little different, but nonetheless, we did see some semblance of that. One last question on the Heat, because I do want to turn to the Lakers, and particularly LeBron, who you covered both in Miami and for a stint in Cleveland as well when you were at Bleacher Report. So you said they're going to make a move. Who are some of the targets you think that they will eye, the Heat, in regards to the trade market, particularly after January 15th, when they can move some more salaries? Because we know December 15th is one day, but January 15th is also another day where pretty much you can unlock your roster.
Well, yeah, I mean, they need to unlock the Dwayne Dedmon contract. He's kind of been played out of the rotation this year. Orlando Robinson, another of their projects, looks like he's gotten that rotation spot for now. Dedmon has not had a good year. They mostly signed him to trade him, but that contract does not become eligible until January 15th. We know the Duncan Robinson contract is basically there for matching money, okay? But some team's going to have to take on the additional years. And then there's the bigger play, which is the Kyle Lowry contract, which I think is going to be very valuable after this season when it becomes expiring. But at this point, I'm not quite sure that it is. It has to be the right kind of team and a team that he can still contribute to in a meaningful way. So they'll have some of these contracts available to trade. Look, would they love to get their hands on Bogdanovich? Of course they would. Okay. I think any team would at this stage. And he's kind of we talk about the perfect fours to play next to Bam. That is a perfect forward to play next to Bam. Okay.
By the way, Bogdanovich not only shoots the three well and is a solid defender, which I don't think most people realize.
Yes.
But anyone who watched him play in Utah particularly will know that. But he gets to the free throw line a lot.
Yes.
Yes. And
he makes his free throws too.
Right. And that's something when we were talking about Hero, I still think the next evolution for him is getting to the line more consistently. But Bojan does that in a big way. So go ahead, continue. Sorry.
Well, and I think you look at a situation like, I know that there's been talk, and your colleague Brian Windhorst has mentioned this, and we've heard some rumblings about this, that Miami may be looking at Minnesota as a possible trade partner. D'Angelo Russell has come up. He's somebody who's got to be extended, but also so is Naz Reid. And I think that's a player that would be very attractive to Miami, but he has to.
Russell is a rental player. That is not a Miami Heat culture player.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. But if you're getting off a year of Lowry, there may be some value to doing that. But then it's really Reid to me that's interesting in that scenario. Now, people have talked about Jay Crowder. I really think that's been a fallback option for the Heat the whole year. I don't think that's really a direction that they want to go. I don't know that they necessarily think. I know they had a good experience with Jay a couple seasons ago. I think he's declined. I don't think they trust the three-point shooting with him going forward. It tends to be streaky. They caught a hot streak in Miami. It didn't really last. And I think they think they're better off with the athleticism of Caleb Martin. You know, we've talked about other names. You mentioned a guy that would be cheaper to get, like a Robert Covington, okay, who's out of the mix with the Clippers. Like, he's cheaper to get than a Marcus Morris. There are these names. And the other one that's always going to come up for Miami is John Collins, because of the issues in Atlanta. He is from West Palm. We know that. He's from Florida. Yeah. But I don't know necessarily that they want to commit that kind of money to him long term. And he's also, I think they believe they can make him a better defender, but he wouldn't be arriving as a particularly good defender. So there are guys out there, but when I've talked to them, their thing is, and I think this gets into the Lakers conversation, is there are so few teams that are really out of it right now. Like, and that makes the trades.
Well, that's a factor, because that's been the case since the play-in became a thing, right? The play-in has allowed teams to stay in it longer, which means there's only a couple of teams. Now, this season, as we all know, as everyone's talked about, will be different because of Wembanyama, right? So, and Scoot Henderson, for that matter, too. I think that both those guys are elite level prospects. And, you know, Scoot, I've had this conversation numerous times as I've done some of his G League games recently. He would be the number one pick in almost any other draft that isn't the one with Wembanyama. So, but I am curious to see how late this thing goes at the deadline, because teams are going to have to make a decision, to your point.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, when you look at the West, there's so many teams kind of bouncing around that I don't think they really get a feel for who's available at this stage. But I think you look at the Utah situation. There's some interesting players there. I think Jared Vanderbilt is a player that they would look at. So there are guys, I think, that could kind of slip through the cracks that they would take a look at.
Kelly Olynyk reunion. Who doesn't want that?
You know what? That wouldn't be so bad. The minutes
I'm with you.
Kelly were always pretty damn good, actually.
I'm with you. He plays well with Bam. All right, let's talk about the Lakers and LeBron. Let's start with LeBron. Actually, let's start with the Lakers, because we were just talking trades. I'm of the opinion And I'm sure LeBron James, if he were listening or watching this on YouTube, will be of the same opinion. We know he was very complimentary of the Rams GM last year, Les Snead, when he wore a T-shirt that said "F them picks." If I'm the Lakers, because the West being as wide open as it is, and you kind of sort of alluded to it there a second ago, man, I'd take a swing. I mean, LeBron is, he started off slow, and this has been a thing for him for years now, right? As he's gotten older, he's kind of taken his time to ramp up. And as he's gotten older, I think it takes a little longer to ramp up. But now we've seen him be LeBron again the last couple of weeks. Even without Anthony Davis, he is literally keeping them afloat by himself again, which is astonishing at 38 years old that he's still able to do this. But I've been a big proponent of, because the West is so wide open, because he's showing us he's still LeBron, you got to try in your best, it's within everyone's best interest to you trade those picks if you have to get someone to help him, because he's clearly shown you he can still do it. And I just don't know in a 7-game series if there's anyone out there in the West, with the Warriors being as dinged up as they are. We don't know what Steph's return looks like. New Orleans is a team that's young, inexperienced. Memphis has more experience, but still young. Denver, yeah, I guess, but I don't think they terrify me. The Clippers, I mean, are they ever going to be healthy? There's a lot of question marks in the West. I think you got to take a swing at it. And if you're in the LeBron James business, you know this as well as anyone because you covered him in numerous stops. You have to push all in at the poker table every chance you get. That is the expectation.
Yeah, no doubt. And I used to have those conversations with Heat officials, and they knew to do this until they amnestied Mike Miller after the 12-13 season and tried to patch it with Tony Douglas and Michael Beasley and Eddie Curry. And then up in Cleveland, I had these conversations with David Griffin and with now Kobe Altman, who at the time was 4th on the totem pole. Now he's 1st. You maximize. There is not another LeBron James coming down the pike. So you do what you have to do. Who cares about those picks? If you are the Lakers, if you are what you think you are, then you will always have star level players who at some point will want to try to fix the thing and be the lead guy. Maybe it won't be LeBron, but somebody. So you trade the picks. What is the value of the picks? All they've done with the picks is trade those guys to try to complement LeBron in the past. So why would you not trade him to try to maximize him at this stage? And look, if you say, well, it's not enough with him and Anthony Davis, it was before. And so you have to find a way to put a roster together. Now, he has not helped himself with the type of roster that he's had a role in constructing. Russ Westbrook is not anywhere near the list of players that you would have put around him. He's not really to blame for this year. But we know that what maximizes LeBron James, and he knows, is shooting. And they didn't go out and get that this offseason. They don't have any of it. Okay. And so, look, can they win a play-in game? Yes. Can they take someone to 6 games in the playoffs? Possibly. But as constructed, they're not going beyond that. Okay. So they need to go get help for him. And again, overcome the mistakes that he made in helping to construct this roster. And it is not going to end well. And I honestly believe if he could be traded before the trade deadline, which he can't be, he might be pushing for that behind the scenes right now, but he can't. So that's not an option. But I've said repeatedly, look, I know he wants to finish with his son. I talked to him about this 8 years ago before his 30th birthday. I did a big one-on-one piece with him when I was at Bleacher Report. He talked about wanting to play with his son when he was 40. That's probably going to end up happening now. Okay. But in the meantime, he should be finishing his career in a place like Cleveland or Miami, a place that knows how to obviously build a team at this stage, because the Cavs have kind of proven this now too with their young talent, and try to finish up and win there. If the Lakers, look, if they don't want him, somebody else will take him. And it does not seem to me like they want him. Okay. This thing about going for the scoring record, look, they had the last couple of years of Kobe's career. Okay. But LeBron is more effective at this stage than Kobe was at that stage. May he rest in peace. Okay. You owe it to LeBron James, to your fans, to your franchise, to put together the most competent possible roster around him. And if it means one more first round pick, who gives a damn? Okay. At that stage. And that's just the way that I view this.
Yeah, I'm with you wholeheartedly. And if you really look at it, outside of the year they won in the bubble, which they had, now granted that year they were only 22nd in threes, but they had guys who could shoot the ball. It wasn't going in, as we alluded to with when you were talking about the Heat earlier this season. They had Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a 3-and-D player. They had Kyle Kuzma, a guy who can shoot threes. They had guys, Alex Caruso could hit a 3. They had some of these guys that could hit shots around him. And now, basically, the year after that, they kept some of those guys. They made a couple moves here and there. They were still really good until Solomon Hill rolled his ankle. at about 30 games into the season. And he was never the same after that because it was a really brutal ankle injury that probably only he could have recovered from. But outside of those 2 seasons, the other 3 years, they have constructed a really poor roster around him. And yeah, he did have something. I mean, listen, he has plausible deniability in this situation. But at the end of the day, he had to at least okay the Russell Westbrook thing. Where I will give him, where I will push back on the organization in that regard a little bit is this past offseason, they could have tried to get off Russell Westbrook because it was clear that that fit wasn't going to work. And because of that, I'm sure he's not thrilled that that didn't happen in the offseason. And now they find themselves in a situation where there are still a bunch of players in this roster that are either not good enough or don't fit right. And Anthony Davis is also hurt. And now he's having to carry a larger load than he expected. So I feel like for the most part, there is a championship. So that really does kind of muddy the water a little bit in how effective they've been with him. But 3 out of the 5 years, they haven't done a great job building the roster around him. And a couple of those weren't his fault, in my opinion. Maybe you can give him attribute one to him. So I think that they need to make that move. Now, the Miles Turner thing is probably off the table now, right? Because Indiana looks like they're going to extend him. They kind of waited on that. There was chatter about Kyrie in the summertime. I don't know. And that's certainly not going to happen now. I don't know what those moves are unless it's Bogdanovich, right? Yeah. That to me makes the most sense. And he's only got 2 more years left on his deal beyond this one. And he's a player whose salary is declining, right? Like it's one of those weird contracts where it doesn't escalate, it de-escalates. I actually think it's not a bad move for them in the short term. And then you could always kind of revisit, as you do every year when you have LeBron James, like Cleveland and Miami did, Cleveland the second time and Miami did. Every year you're reevaluating. And by the way, you're also reevaluating even like within the season. Do you remember the year where Derrick Rose, Jay Crowder, who you mentioned earlier, Dwayne Wade were all in Cleveland, and before the All-Star break, they were all gone, and LeBron still
traded Dwayne. He traded Dwayne. He traded his best friend.
Right. So you have to. That's the way you got to treat this situation when you're in the LeBron James business. So I'm with you on that. They need to make some move. I don't know what you do in the offseason. I do think that is a separate question. I don't know. I'm not willing to speculate down that path, but I would imagine if they do run it back, or if they do, stand pat, that's not going to sit well with him in the offseason. And that's something that you and I both know will probably be the case as far as the way he would react if that indeed was the case.
You think there'll be some passive-aggressive tweets? I think there'll be
wait a second. Passive-aggressive tweets? I mean, he's openly talked about the roster in post games. Like,
well, he did it
this season.
He did it, as you and I both know. He decided to do it in Miami. Okay, he did it in Miami. Like, there's a reason that happened. He used the term. Yeah. He used, and I'm not saying he wants to go to Miami, but I think being in, although I don't think he would mind it, but I think being in that setting around people who are always trying to win, it doesn't always work. But we know what Pat and Spo and Andy and that group. You and I both covered them for years. We know what they're trying to do. Him using the term DNA and saying the main thing is the main thing. I mean, we literally we're a Miami-based network. We sell that T-shirt. The main thing is the main thing. Keep the main thing on our website. Okay, that's a Pat Rileyism. Right. Him saying those things in Miami, okay, after losing that game in a response to a question by Dave McMenamin, who we know he has a good relationship with, so he's going to give that kind of an answer. Like, come on. I mean, it's a clear message to the Lakers. Be more like these guys. Doesn't mean he wants to be sent to Miami, but it just means not doing what you're supposed to do.
Correct. And by the way, of course, there is also a nerve there because Pat was part of the Lakers organization, right? On top of that. And here's the other thing. Remember last year when you could tell he was at the very least neutral on Frank Vogel at that point. He was there last year in Miami and was gushing about Spo. And prior to that, he had gushed about Ty Lue. So, I mean, there is those passive-aggressive discussions are certainly part of the equation. But to your point, forget about what he did in Miami. Game 1 of the season, Ethan, he said, we don't have lasers on this team, referring to the shooters or the lack thereof. Right. So this has been a constant theme that when things get choppy, the waters get choppy, he has not been reluctant to say how he feels. I would say, I don't even know if it's passive aggressive. I would say it's kind of, in some cases, aggressive.
Right.
So yeah, there is some passive aggressive nature to it, but there's been aggressive nature there as well.
And
So
there's gonna be a
anyway,
little
man,
field
listen,
card, yeah.
I'm just look. I'm doing this game on Wednesday on ESPN with Breen, Van Gundy, and Jackson. I just want a good game. That's all I always root for in these scenarios when I'm at these games. I think we'll get it because as we talked about earlier, he's playing at an incredible level. Which even I've seen so many of his games over the years here, Miami, Cleveland, you as well. Like I'm still, as wild as this sounds, I am a little surprised that at this stage he is playing the way he's playing at the moment, with the type of intensity and the output that he's put up. I mean, literally, when you look at him, he's like the oldest player to put up these back-to-back 40-point games. The only other person in the conversation is Jordan, and he's now done it twice where Michael only did it once.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, he's incredible, and I don't think we're really going to appreciate it until we're done. I mean, I think or he's done, and we may be done before he's done. So, I mean, seeing it up close for 4 years and in the Big Three era and what he handled there and the way that he grew and he matured and what he's built off the court. I mean, look, Jordan, LeBron, we can have these debates, okay? But I mean, he's special in his own right. There's no question. He's not perfect in the way he handles things. He obviously has contributed to his own demise from a team perspective out there, but you have to do what you can to win when you have him, because it's just not going to come around again. And we can say, well, that organization, has had Magic, has had Kobe, has had Kareem, has had Wilt, has had Jerry West, and that's true. But this is a whole different ball game here. And one championship and a bunch of missed playoffs and play-ins, like that's not the kind of legacy that he should have in Los Angeles. I didn't think he should have gone there in the first place. I never thought they were going to love him like they loved Kobe or they loved Magic. He went there. He obviously did it for reasons other than just basketball. That has worked out, but you have to, the basketball part matters, okay? And it matters to him, and it matters where he's ranked, and it matters how he's perceived. And they're not doing him justice right now, okay? And you can say when AD comes back, well, at least give it a chance when AD comes back to try to make a run, like we talked about. The West is open. I mean, the West is open. The teams at the top, like, do we believe in New Orleans and Memphis at this point? They haven't proven it yet. Denver haven't proven it yet. The Clippers can't stay healthy. Phoenix seems to have turmoil there. There's a whole bunch of good teams out there. There's no great team. And to be honest, there's no great team in the East. I mean, Boston's really good. Milwaukee, I think, is the best team. But Philadelphia is flawed. The Nets could go haywire at any minute. There is an opportunity for the Lakers here to at least have a representative season with him. Trade the picks, get him help.
Ethan Skolnick, longtime NBA scribe, columnist at the Miami Herald and the Sun Sentinel in South Florida, was at Bleacher Report as well, covering the NBA and LeBron James specifically for many years. And now 5 Reasons Sports, his own venture. Tell people where they can find your stuff.
Go to 5 Reasons Sports on Twitter with a number. That's the easiest place. 5 on the Floor is the basketball podcast, which we go every day on the Miami Heat. So you can check that out. I'm also doing a national podcast called The Step Back, which you can find as well. I'll try not to compete with George. I don't think I possibly could. And also the 5 Reasons YouTube channel, 5reasonsports.com. I gave you just 25 reasons to follow us. So there you go.
There you go. That actually could be your slogan. I gave you 25 reasons. You should list all those things. Put that on a t-shirt. Ethan Skolnick, thank you, brother. Happy New Year.
You too, my friend.
All right, that'll do it for episode number 1 of the Lockdown Podcast. My goal is to have this out at least twice a week, and we will talk to all my friends in this great business about the teams that you care about and the leagues and the sports that you care about. So appreciate you guys listening in. Subscribe to the podcast. Hit the like button too. Subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. Subscribe on the podcast audio feed as well, where you can find that is very simple. Go to the Sedano and Cap ESPN Los Angeles radio show feed. It's going to be a separate little line in that feed of podcasts. So go there. That's our traditional radio show podcast. And listen to that while you're there too, for that matter. But this Lockdown Podcast will be a separate line in that podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your podcast, you'll find it there. But of course, hit the like button and subscribe here on YouTube as well. Thank you. And until we talk again, see you.